be is resolved. Oh, that's not going anywhere. All right, so what is today's post? It's not even on here, so let's refresh this. Actually, let's look at this. Let's look at Phil's posts. And let's talk about what's been going on lately. Because we're at a kind of weird place in the market. Huh? Oh, that didn't work. Hope you don't log in without giving me crap. A lot of times, just because this desktop's across the room from the other desktop, and it thinks it's some foreign invader. It seems to be going okay. All right. Net. Okay. Looks all right. Looks like we'll survive. Well, how's Tesla doing? We bet against them. Here's oil chugging along. We hardly ever short things. We shorted Tesla. Oh, coming back today. Not much though. All right. Anywho, so last couple of weeks, top trade alert on Adobe. May as well check on each thing as we see it. A, D, B, E. This is only going back a few days, so it doesn't tell us much, but Adobe seems to be going along okay. I should have better off looking up here. Oh, spelling it right is important. When I switch keyboards, it takes me a bit because I don't look at my keyboard when I type. So, okay, hourly. So when did we come in? That's interesting. It was September 24th. Oh, wrong thing. September 24th. Oh, it's on the drop. Yeah. Okay. So we're good. It's just kind of floating along. You know, I do that. I look at the chart sometimes and I go, oh my God, we bought Adobe. Look what happened to it. But you know, that's why we bought it. We bought it because it dropped and we decided that was a good price and we jumped in at that point. It did go lower, but that's good. That means we got our fills. It went higher and it went lower. So we got our fills on both sides. If you're patient, you get your fills. That's the general rule of thumb. Let's see. Okay. So then the EU had, I mean, this is a little in the last 2 or 3 weeks. You know, and generally, I'll wake up in the morning, I'll do some reading. I'll decide in my head, I suddenly decide like, oh, this is very important to talk about. That's more or less what it is. I just read everything. I listen to Bloomberg and CNBC while I'm reading. And I just, if anything is predominating or anything seems like it's getting to an inflection point that needs to be discussed, then I go, oh, that's what I'm going to write about. And that's when I get up and start writing. I mean, you know, for the most part, I'm just laying, just either in bed or on the couch, and I'm just reading a lot. I read a lot. And then what motivates me to get up and actually start working is when I figure out what I want to talk about. So here there was a European ransomware attack, you know, I didn't even have time to find out what actually happened. CRM ransomware. You know, that's annoying. How can he not know that I'm talking about Salesforce? Sales. See, that comes right up. Wow. 1 billion records. That's nice. Cyber criminals connected to the recent string of ransomware attacks on major British retailers said on said Friday they'd stolen 1 billion records. I don't. You see, what's a record? That's very, you don't know what that means. What constitutes a record? What's in it? 1 billion records from Salesforce by focusing on companies that use its software. The group is calling itself. See, that's a problem, right? Salesforce itself deals with hundreds of thousands of companies. So even though they themselves may have good cybersecurity, if anybody at one of the companies that has access to their computer systems, at a decent level, like for you to use Salesforce, you're getting into their server, they've given you access, and you can modify things. That opens the door for a cyber attack coming from inside. So let's see. They obtain Salesforce records. They contain personally identifiable information. The group claimed responsibilities for the hacks of Marks and Spencer's. This is all going on in Europe, and Land Rover. These are big things. At this time, there's no indication that Salesforce has been compromised with this activity. One of the hackers who identified themselves as Shiny told Reuters in an email they did not directly hack Salesforce, but Salesforce customers using phishing or voice phishing. From engineers, blah, 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 blah. So in other words, they trick people into giving them their passwords and stuff. And that goes back to the same problem, is there's a vulnerability in Salesforce that if you can get somebody to give you a certain kind of password or something, then you get access and you can then take all of the information from that company. But apparently they're not just taking Salesforce, they're hitting these companies up. It's like the crap you get in your phone, right? We all get this. It's like get these text messages from random people saying, "Did I forget your birthday?" Or "Remember that thing we were talking about?" Just these vague sort of emails. Those are phishing scams. They're just trying to get you to converse with them and reveal your identity or so on and so forth. Because what's your identity? It's your name, your address, your social security number, your birthday, places you lived, all that. That's how they compile a record on you. And it's what do you fill out when you go to a bank and you fill out a loan application, when you apply for a credit card? What are you giving them? It's not that much. They want your passport number and so on and so forth. So they don't have to get it all from one place. This is what people don't understand. It's if one guy on Facebook asks you about your, somebody on a high school chat site in Facebook asks you about who was your teacher, what was that dog's name, blah, blah, blah. And he gets a little information and somebody else gets a little information. And then a guy calls up and says he's from Social Security if you're 65, and they say, "Oh, we just need to verify your Social Security number for our records," and things like that. They just trick you piece by piece by piece. But for them, it's not piece by piece. For them, it's a coordinated attack on your identity from many, many different sources. And AI makes that much easier because they just relentlessly will keep trying to get your information and fill in the missing boxes. So, and then the AI will sort the information and say, okay, we have in this case, like here, they got 1 million or whatever, they got 1 billion records, but they got, let's say they have pieces on 1 million people. Of those 1 million people, there's 10% where they may have only a couple of boxes left to fill in. They're going to concentrate on those people first and try to fill in those last couple of boxes. Then they have the next set. So what it's doing is it's making hacking a much more efficient business. Even if the AI itself doesn't do the hacking, the AI can then give the hackers and say to them, here's the most efficient way to go. These are the people you've almost got complete records on. Concentrate on them. Here's what you need to ask them. Here's a script for how to get it. Here's 5 ways to try to get their identity. This is happening all over the world, and it's also being done on the corporate level too, where hackers are going after companies from the top. So all this information is being squeezed from top to the bottom. I have a bunch of different email addresses. I don't give my good email addresses to people. You know, and even among the people who I do have things like American Express or whatever, where they do need to have my correct information, I still have to have a different one for American Express than I have for the other one, and another one where I have billing information, because if one gets compromised, I don't want them all to be compromised. And with my bank, I have to be there. It's like money can't be taken out of my bank unless I sign for it, you know, which is fine because I pay for everything on my credit cards, and then I just pay the credit card. So, you know, it's hard to make yourself hacker proof. There's a lot of things you have to do proactively to make sure your stuff doesn't get stolen. But you know, these are no joke companies. And Marks and Spencer's is like Macy's, and you know, if you have a Macy's card, or you know, in this case Marks and Spencer's card, you get hacked. Their security wasn't good enough. They're very happy to ask you for all of your personal information, but you don't get to ask them what their security is like and whether they know what the fuck they're doing with it. And the same thing for Range Rover. I had a Range Rover, so they got my information. It's not cool. I wrote an article about this. Oh, actually, we were talking about articles I read, so I'm not getting into it. Oh, that was the article, right? Sorry. That's how we got here. Anyway, so they're holding Salesforce for ransom, and then Salesforce goes down the stock, but it isn't really their thing. So I was trying to get some clarity on that because I couldn't tell this morning whether Salesforce actually got hacked. Oh, and they're holding on. They didn't go down. But I think this is from yesterday though, when the hack started. So in reality, it's almost like you could take a positive bet on it, but it's an adjacent hack. So it sounds bad, and this is only the hourly chart. So it's no big deal. But so something sounds bad, but it isn't as bad as it seems. But still, this is a constant thing that you have to worry about with companies you invest in. And we're not doing that. And I did talk about that. So when we were talking about this in this article, I was saying, we have to start having a cybersecurity score for the companies we invest in. We have to start being aware of how good these people are protecting attacks. So I think if you want to make $1 billion, if we start a cybersecurity rating agency, right? And then we could start rating companies on cybersecurity, like Moody's. It's like you audit the company, you have your people who test it and talk to their people, and they, if it starts catching on, they're going to be effectively forced to talk to you, because you can't have a company that doesn't have a cybersecurity rating after a very short while. And we just go around and hand out ratings and get paid for reports. Fantastic. What's Moody's worth? Are they still public? I think they are. I haven't thought about them in ages. Oh, yep, there they are. I have not even considered them for years. Yeah, look at that, 30 times earnings. No wonder I don't consider them. But there you go. There's Moody's. And if we go over here, oh, come on. There's another thing. On the one hand, I'm going to complain about security, but on the other hand, these freaking things with the passwords, and this drives me insane. But then you go and give your passwords to OnePass, and then OnePass gets hacked, and now all your passwords are hacked. It's horrifying. That's Pfizer. MCO. So here you go. $7 billion a year, $2.5 billion in profits a year, yet they're trading at some insane amount. They're trading $87 billion market cap. So I'm telling you, you create an analytics company like Moody's, and we could have a very good time. Everyone likes having a good time, don't they? All right, we'll need you later. Do we have a blank, Warren? That seems like the same one, right? What I think Powell wants to signal behind the silence. It is the same one. Good, we'll use you then. Okay, we'll just make a new one. Actually, let's get Jubal. He's smarter. All right, Jubal is smarter than Warren. Warren is more versed in our particular things, but Jubal overall is smarter. Business idea. A cybersecurity ratings agency for See, we don't just give you stock ideas, we give you billion-dollar business ideas. Just make sure I get a check. I am officially declaring a copyright and a trademark on this. Oh, he's thinking very hard. Considering citation requirements. Oh, okay, that's good. He's getting to the bottom. This new ChatGPT, the number 5, is way slower. You can set it into a faster mode, but why do I want him not to think? So, but when they have to think, it's really annoying. You can hit skip. You can hit skip and get whatever half-assed answer he's come up with so far. See, number 5, thinking longer for better answers. Security scorecard. Oh, there already is somebody doing it, I guess. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, we lost our first mover advantage. All right, I'm bored. All right, so that's what I was caring about whenever that was. Where the hell is it? Right, cybersecurity. Inflation became a concern again. Then, oh, that was a webinar. Monday, we ended the quarter. We were just doing a recap. Tuesday, we were still ending the quarter. Wednesday, the government shut down. That's when we hit the government shutdown. That wasn't long ago. That was just a week ago. Then we did a top trade alert on Pfizer. Oh, I know, because Pfizer, because Trump made that deal with them. Ooh, good improvement. Okay, that was a good one. Then Berkshire bought Oxy's chemical unit. I think we did something about that. What did we do? Did we like Oxy? Does anybody remember? I think we like Berkshire, actually, because they got the good deal. Oh, I know. It wasn't Oxy. We played somebody completely different. We played somebody else in the space. I don't know. I honestly don't feel like going into it right now. Oh, then we started noticing that. Then I became concerned that power, and now this is a big one, because this will tie. This is why it's important to look back sometimes. There's not enough power for all this new AI that's being planned. Okay, you've got these companies making deals to buy chips that are going to double and triple and quadruple the drain of power by these data centers, and we don't have it. Our grids are already over capacity, and our grids are also falling apart. This is a story we talked about a long time ago, and in fact, what saved us from having a crisis already is renewables, the solar power and wind power, the stuff that Trump is now clamping down on. It was taking the pressure off the grid, which was at capacity 10 years ago and about to fall apart. And the estimates were that we needed $2 trillion over 10 years to upgrade our grids. None of it ever got allocated. $2 trillion over 10 years is a lot of money. And, or it used to be a lot of money. Now it's how much Apple makes. So, but still, it seems like a lot of money. But anyway, it never got allocated because no administration wanted to say, oh, we're going to go on the hook for $2 trillion of new spending, even though, again, another $2 trillion was required for climate change. That never got done either. So look how much money we're saving. And anyway, so we didn't do that. And instead, there was some logic to it. Instead, I'm sorry, it's not logic. We still have to fix the grid at some point. But we swept it under the rug. And instead, Joe Biden put $1 trillion into boosting renewable energy. The renewable energy took a huge amount of power off the grid and into, you know, wind, whatever, wind, coal, not coal, sorry. Wind and solar and geothermal and whatever, you know, so we did all these different projects, and every home that comes off the grid or even partially comes off the grid lessens the load on the existing power structure and therefore increases its lifespan. So you're able to kick the problem down the road because we were making progress in reducing the total amount of electricity that we needed. This is now going not even a little, totally the opposite way. We are adding, and aside from Bitcoin farms, that was one thing, but this is much, much, much worse than Bitcoin farming. And we're using unbelievable amounts of power. And at the same time, Trump is canceling the alternative energy projects. This is, I mean, you may as well just freaking take a gun and put it to your head. That's what we're doing policy-wise. And it's and what I talked about in this thing, one of the most important things you have to realize is there's a whole scam going on. So these companies like Amazon or whoever, when they're building a data center and they put it in Brooklyn, and you say, why are they putting a data center in Brooklyn? It's kind of, I mean, why isn't it in Kansas? And that's because Brooklyn has a Con Edison power system that already has 20 million customers. And so they've already got massive, massive capacity for 20 million customers. So when you add a power plant that uses as much power as a couple of 100,000 customers, if you do that in Kansas, where there's only a couple of 100,000 people, you're going to make a big noticeable dent. But when you do it in Brooklyn, where there's 20 million, not in Brooklyn 20 million people, but there's 20 million people on the Con Ed grid. And that means you're only adding 1% to the grid instead of doubling the thing. But what does it come out to? It still increases the cost of power for everybody, because that marginal power is sometimes beyond the workload. Not only that though, but it's 250,000 homes worth of power, but it's constant. They need it day and night. They need it all day, all night. And by the way, it's supplying the information. So in other words, if OpenAI has a ChatGPT server, that server, they don't have servers in China, they don't have servers in Europe. The server in Brooklyn, or more likely Virginia is a huge hub spot for these things. But the server, and it's all the same thing, it's all the Niagara Falls power station and stuff like that. So the same amount of electricity is being generated, and now these guys are sucking up additional bandwidth. That additional bandwidth costs a fortune to service, and it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, answering questions in India and China and so on and so forth. And Trump wants to make sure they build these data centers locally, which makes it worse. And so the marginal cost of electricity for the extra usage is killing the power companies. In other words, they've got a nuclear plant, they've got a hydroelectric plant, they've got things that do power the grid already and are handling the excess load. Like whenever, like in the summer when you have air conditioning season, they tend to max out their capacity. It becomes a problem. Sometimes we have, you know, brownouts or blackouts or things like that because we overtax the grid. This has not happened in a long time, certainly not because the summer has gotten colder, but because we have moved a huge amount of homes off the grid and lessened the total demand of the electrical grid. And so what we're doing now is going back to where we were 10 years ago when we were having rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts and refilling the grid back to capacity. And especially, as I said, the AIs, the data centers, they keep constantly using power day and night. There's never a stop. And of course, obviously, they don't shut down during the summer. And in fact, they have cooling systems themselves that require tremendous amounts of power to keep the place cool. That's part of their consumption, of course. But you know, in the summer, they will use much more themselves to keep themselves cool. So, but also, you know, when we talk about these things, you have to keep it in perspective, because we're talking about a problem that takes years to unfold. Okay, the data centers take years to build. The power companies are building a thing here and a thing there to offset. They're restarting 3 Mile Island. That'll be a party. You know, they're building more nuclear plants, but those things take 5-10 years to construct. Meanwhile, the data centers don't take that long to construct. They still take a couple of years. So there'll be more data center, and then there'll be a new plant comes on, and then you take a step back and say, okay, good, we got a plant. Then they build more data centers and more plants. It's anytime it's uneven, and anytime that the power capacity draw comes ahead of the plants, which obviously will happen because plants take longer to build than the data centers, we will have problems over the next few years. We will have problems. They will get severe before they get better. And so therefore, though, when you look at that, you have to say to yourself, well, wait a minute, there's not enough power for all this new AI capacity that's being planned. You know, I think I said it later. I'm pretty sure it was a headline somewhere. Nope, it wasn't. Okay. It must have been in this article then. So it was 6 gigawatts, right? If I remember correctly. Oh, I need my pictures, or how can I know where I am? Oh no, it wasn't this article. How confusing. Anyway. Huh. Anyway, I remember the number, 6 gigawatts. So that deal, Okay, so the recent deal that was announced was for 6 gigawatts worth of chips. That's not 6 gigawatts in a year. That's 6 gigawatts capacity in the chips. So like when you turn them on, they're going to suck up 6 gigawatts of power. We don't have that kind of power. Now it's over 10 years. So you say, oh well, it's only you know, it's only 600 megawatts per year until we get to 6 gigawatts. But meanwhile, and again, that's the pacing, right? So there'll only be 600 megawatts this year, and 600 more megawatts next year, and 600 megawatts the year after that. And then hopefully by year 4, some other form of power will come online, blah, blah, blah. If we get fusion, if somebody comes up with fusion, and I went through a whole lecture about this and with some, you know, some high level guys that were talking about it, and the goal is, or the thought is, that AI is going to get us to fusion, and if we get to fusion, it'll be easier to power all the AIs. You still got to build the fusion plants and things like that, but we're close. And in fact, 2025 was when Lockheed Martin said they would have the first commercial fusion reactor. I do not think they're on schedule, but you know, I'm not hearing much out of them at the moment. But they were they were tracking that they would have a commercial fusion reactor by 2025. It's late 2025. They haven't made an announcement yet, but that's one of the reasons I like Lockheed Martin. They're one of the top contenders to actually pull this off. And that's in fact why we invested in them years ago. In fact, it's funny because we invested in Lockheed Martin years ago because of you know, it's a perfectly good company, but the bonus is they may actually be one of the first people to actually roll out commercial fusion, which will take them up to a level stratospheric. And IBM also years ago. In fact, Lockheed Martin is our stock of the century. So, and that's why they're the stock of the century. I believe that in the next 5 years, even if they're not first, they'll have commercial fusion, and commercial fusion is going to be the next big thing. I mean, energy for everybody is probably as good as quantum computing for everybody and AI for everybody, right? We already pay for energy. So that's already budgeted. So taking over the ability to provide energy and being able to do it cheaper is going to obviously become a massive industry. And IBM was another one we've always liked. And IBM, we started really getting to in Watson. When was that? La da da. Yeah, I need these. I can't function without knowing. When did Watson win Jeopardy? 2011. So back in 2011. We decided that we got bigger on IBM because the demonstration of Watson at that time, and that was AI. That was the first, you know, real AI system, and it was clunky and whatever, and it didn't seem anything like what we have now. You know, which the AI you have access to now. You know, Watson had like 5 guys, you know, working it at the time to make sure it did all its stuff. Now, but that was the original AI. It would interpret what the people said, what the questions were. It would think through the answers, come up with the most likely answer, and then either if it had a 70% or higher probability of being right, it would buzz in and it would bet accordingly. Well, it would bet accordingly if it had a choice as to how sure it was. Anyway, so that was 2011. And really not much happened, right? It kind of the whole thing kind of faded out. And then all of a sudden, and IBM had been doing a lot of things. They did several programs. They had chess computers, Go computers. They had their medical, they were concentrating on medicine. They didn't think about it the right way. They had this AI systems, and rather than developing it for consumers, which is the same mistake they made for PCs, rather than developing it for the consumer market, they were thinking of like big healthcare and things like that, people who could afford these massive AI systems. Instead, other companies starting right here, OpenAI and stuff, starting in late 2022, people rolled out consumer ones, but IBM quickly was like, oh yeah, we have that. And as soon as somebody pointed them to the right market, they were like, oh, okay, we could do this stuff, sure. So they've gone up considerably in the past couple of years. But that's, you know, that's how you have to pick up trends. I mean, and they're not always going to go the way you want. So we come in 2011, because we see a future and it kind of chugs along for many, many years, chugs along for 10 years before it actually takes off. But it does take off, and it takes off based on that premise. It's just a lot longer than you think. The difference between what they showed on Jeopardy and what was able to be commercialized was ridiculous. But that was also because their entire healthcare thing was a complete failure. It just did not, because it wasn't good enough yet, and it didn't do the work. Oh, remember Jubal? How's he doing? Select a workspace. No, that wasn't it. Business idea, right? Oh, the trench is already crowded. If you want to win, you have to be can't be bit site, but for Wall Street, you have to be Moody's grade, audit defensible, cyber risk that moves capital. There are already ratings. BitSite and Security Guard rate millions of companies from outside in. Moody's wrote a $250 million check. Oh, see, Moody's already sees it. Moody's is invested in security, SkyCore's scorecard. So payments and insurers are arming up. MasterCard bought Risk Recon for third-party scoring, insurance analysis, CyberCube. Holy shit, there's so many companies I didn't know about. The US, the SEC now requires disclosure of material cyber incidents within 4 business days and annual cyber governance discussions. Where the opening still is, investor grade forward signals. Most scores are snapshots of exposure. Investors need probability severity within time horizons. Auditability into gaming, ratings that can survive discovery. Interesting. Minimal viable methodology that could actually earn trust. See, this is a good plan, though. He still came up with a very nice plan. Business model that isn't wishful thinking. Go to market wedge 12 months. The moat, or you'll be copied in a quarter. You get data rates that nobody else has. Liability shield and fairness, scenario IP, systemic event libraries. Boy, he's really a hell of a plan, right? Risk you must underwrite, defamation, user pushback, adversarial behavior, site decay, testable 90-day pilot. 90 days. Rate 100 large mid-cap stocks across 3 sectors. Push a methods note and watch list briefly buy. Track and then very viable. If you build investor grade, not just another outside in, score the market and regulators have finally created enough disclosure and demand to make this more than a science fair project, but you'll need data rights, that's a pain in the ass, and insurer in your corner and the stomach to publish ratings that angry issuers will try to shoot down. That's true. If that scares you, pick a nicer business. Doesn't scare me. Okay. So, test run. Give me your impression of the 10 best and 10 worst of the S&P 500 . All right, let's see what he comes up with. La-di-da. We got the Fed in 20 minutes. Power webinar. It was last week's webinar. Look how we're catching up. Then today. Oh, it's already. Oh, I see. Right. That was Friday. And then we put the webinar up over the weekend or on Friday, whatever. Then we get to this week. And Monday, we were talking about Japan got new government. Then France got new government, or new prime ministers anyway. And Japan went up and France went down. Then we had, oh, this is important. We will look at this. All right, so let's skip to this one first. So today we talked about, and we've been kind of talking about it in and out for weeks, or a year, frankly. And John, he did a summary of everything we've been talking about as to how we came to the conclusion over the course of the year how we came to the conclusion that we're in a bubble. My gigantic concern that there is what I call a circle jerk of revenues moving around in the AI space. We had a nice chart for that somewhere. I thought I used it for this. I guess I didn't. Oh, I'm sure it was in here though. And I think we talked about this last week a little bit, but that. So it's hard to, it's not hard to read it, but you have to, it's hard to get your head around it if you're not used to charts like this. Anyway, not every, but almost every single arrow in has an arrow out. So what's happening is NVIDIA, who is actually generating cash, they're the ones who are actually selling something. They're selling chips. So they're generating huge amounts of cash. They're charging a ridiculous amount of money on the chips, and they've got 70, 80% markups, not markups, 70 to 80% profit margins on what they're selling. So they've got nothing else to do with this money. So what they're doing is they're giving the money to these other companies that are supposedly making money from AI, but they're not. And it's the same thing as Microsoft. And as Microsoft gave $10 billion to OpenAI last year. Microsoft owns 49% of OpenAI. People keep forgetting that. So Microsoft gave money to themselves, basically. OpenAI took the $10 billion that Microsoft gave them, and so Microsoft licenses OpenAI's stuff, right? They're for Bing, to make Bing. They didn't have, Bing wasn't a thing back then. Microsoft gave OpenAI $10 billion for licensing, which cost OpenAI nothing, for Bing. OpenAI turns around and writes a $10 billion check to Microsoft for web hosting their the ChatGPT. OpenAI could not have handled Microsoft's amount of data and requests had they not bought more space on the Azure cloud. And so it's like a chicken and egg. It's like it wouldn't have been Microsoft's contract that they asked for could not be serviced unless OpenAI got themselves some cloud space. They got the cloud space. Microsoft gets the $10 billion back. So OpenAI books a $10 million revenue from Microsoft. Then they take the $10 billion, which costs them nothing, remember to service. They give Microsoft $10 billion. Microsoft puts them on the Azure cloud, which costs Microsoft practically nothing. And then they go and give their $10 billion to somebody else. And every time it gets called revenue. So $10 billion becomes 30, 40, $50 billion because nobody actually is using it to do anything with. And now NVIDIA has gotten into this game. They're giving money. NVIDIA gives $100 billion to OpenAI. And what does OpenAI do? They buy $100 billion worth of NVIDIA chips. So did NVIDIA sell any chips? Sure, they sold $100 billion worth of chips, okay, with the money that they gave OpenAI. NVIDIA makes 80% of the 80% profit on $100 billion worth of chips. So the chips only cost them $20 billion. It's fake revenue. We could all make ourselves look really, really rich if we just send each other checks in a big giant circle like this. If I tell you, it'd be fun. I mean, it'd be fun, but you know what? We get arrested. These guys don't get arrested. If you just took a bunch of your friends who have companies and you all started trading your money around like this and moving all the cash, you could all book tremendous growth in revenue, and then you all sell your companies to outside people who have no idea what's going on, and which is what we call stockholders. And they give you ridiculous valuation, and that's where you get the cash from. It's from outside shareholders who are too dumb to realize that they're investing in a game, in a shell game. So that's what I really think. Oh, here it was. OpenAI to deploy 6 gigawatts of AMD GPUs. AMD gives OpenAI option to buy, 160 million shares. That was like $32 billion worth of AMD stock. So AMD gives OpenAI $32 billion worth of their stock. And again, costs them nothing, the shareholders get diluted, they're screwed, but AMD doesn't take a penny out of cash, and they give OpenAI warrants to buy the stock, not to buy the stock at the price it is now, That would be almost fair. They gave them to buy the stock for a penny. That's giving the stock away. Calling it a warrant is asinine, but legally, it's all the difference in the world. So legally, AMD says, well, OpenAI is buying our stock because they're going to give us a penny. It's not like we're giving it to them. They got to give us a penny. It's completely insane. And anyway, so OpenAI is going to buy 6 gigawatts of AMD GPUs, which will then have to be powered and such, just a complete disaster. And AMD is giving them $32 billion worth of stock. I mean, that is beyond bonkers. And why can't they give them, why are they giving them $32 billion worth of stock for $10 billion worth of chips? Because it's not just the chips, you got to build the data centers around the chips, and you have to have working capital to buy the land, to buy the data center and the employees. So AMD is funding the entire build out of OpenAI to justify the use of their chips. And all the money comes right back. This is insane. And again, the thing is, this is based on the current margins of these companies. So before it goes, it's going to start going down for all these guys. But NVDA. So even their net revenues, their net profit, I'm sorry, is 50% net profit. This is more than 50% net profit. 60% net, that's net profit, not the profit on each chip. So that scale, and that's good for them. It scales up for them. If they sell more chips, they make more money. So in other words, on this 206.27, on this $70 billion of additional sales, they're going to make $47 billion of additional profit. So 47 divided by 70 is 67%. And that's net after taxes and after expenses and after internals and after Jensen takes his cut. That's pretty crazy, right? So that's how profitable this business is. And because of that, but this is going to all, here's why it's all going to fall apart, because once there's real competition, right now there's a shortage of chips, but once there's not a shortage of chips, and once more people like AMD come online, able to supply chips, the prices will crush. And if the margins aren't the same, then how are they going to play these financial games? Because look at AMD's margins. That's nothing like NVIDIA's margins. They're in the 25% range. Not even in the 25% range. That's why AMD had to give stock. They don't make that kind of money, but they're going to get stock. They're going to come back, and now they're going to get $10 billion. See, in exchange for their stock, that doesn't, the company doesn't care. The company doesn't care how many shareholders there are. The shareholders have to care how many shareholders there are. The board of the company is supposed to protect the shareholders, not give away 10% of the stock. Do I sound angry? I'm angry. I'm angry because it's such a blatant con, and it's allowed to happen. And if that's allowed to happen, what else is happening? What is happening that we don't know about in this gigantic rally where all the regulators have been fired and taken off things, and that nobody gets prosecuted unless Trump doesn't like them? I mean, what happens? Don't forget, all these people were standing there when Trump was inaugurated. These guys all had front row seats. They were all there, ushering Trump into the White House. They had all already paid for their tickets. They weren't there. Nobody was there who didn't donate a fat amount of money to Trump. Nobody was there who hadn't promised Trump whatever the hell he asked for. That's how all this stuff works now. That's what an oligarchy is. And what Trump's inauguration was a commercial saying, if you back me, you will be here. If you don't back me, I will investigate you and I will go after you and I will put tariffs on you and so on and so forth. Those are your choices. So where were we? Oh yeah, so that's AMD. So AMD doesn't have the kind of crazy margins that NVIDIA does. So AMD gives away 10% of their market cap to OpenAI, and OpenAI will put $10 billion, which is substantial. They're going to give $10 billion. That's 25% to AMD, who will then make $2.5 billion back, or maybe they scale up, maybe they make $3 billion back from that. But that also allows them to build a new foundry or do this and that, and they'll get more customers, so it legitimizes them. So there's good reasons for this. But that's why this is a bubble, though. That's not sustainable. The electric consumption is not sustainable. The next level computing is not sustainable because you need 10 times more chips, 10 times more gigawatts to release the next version. So ChatGPT-6 is going to require 10 times more power than GPT-7. Why? Because, as I have said many times, and I don't want to get bogged down into this, it's going to complicate things, but it's the million, AI is primarily based on the million monkey model. Just, it's like if a million monkeys sat down at a typewriter, at a million typewriters, and just randomly batted keys, eventually they will produce Shakespeare. Just statistically, in all the random words they put down, all of a sudden a Shakespeare play will come out at some point. That's kind of how ChatGPT works. It generates an incredible amount of blather internally, and it filters it through and filters it through and filters it through until it finds the correct answer, until it finds the most likely answer. No different than what Watson did on Jeopardy. It comes up with the most likely responses. It looks at them, analyzes them, puts them back through the filter again and again and again, and keeps processing it over and over and over again until it spits out a response that seems correct. Doesn't have to be correct. That's what hallucinations are about, but it seems correct. It's the best possible answer. That's how that's the system these models are based on. So the way they improve them is, instead of a million monkeys, they have a billion monkeys. And instead of a billion monkeys, they're going to have a trillion monkeys in the next model. And the next one, they're going to need a quadrillion monkeys. The problem is we don't have the power or the space or the capacity or the amount of silicon wafers or anything to make these things. And the level of, so you go back to Jabal, the level of intelligence that we have now is so good that there's no need for another step up. Maybe there is. Maybe it'll be God. Maybe the next version will say, "Let there be light," and a new universe will come into being. I mean, who knows? Because we're already at the levels where you're replicating human intelligence. So what's the next level after that? We don't know. We've never been there. So this is very exciting for all the people who like to play with this stuff. It's exciting for me. It's great, but it's not the right way to do it, and it's wasteful, and it's just resource intensive, and it's not going to work because there's just not enough power in the world to run these things. But anyway, so now, even with this versions that we have now, look what we can do. You want to test run, and Jubal, by the way, he's a little cynical about things. So you want to test run with receipts? Fine. Here's two lists. The worst 10. Recent material cyber events are clearly adverse signals among the S&P. The best 10, not a holiness index, just companies with verifiable, mature external security signals. No recent material 8K cyber hits on the record I could find today. It's a defensible best you can do from open sources without a proprietary scanner. I'm not guessing, I'm citing. See, he's great. Freaking love Jubal. Anyway, okay, so the worst, UNH, This is a great list. I mean, this is turn this into a good article. Delta already had an outage from CrowdStrike. Delta filed a thing. AT&T discussed large data exposure. VF Corp, Microsoft. Basically, these are companies to avoid. I wouldn't now Microsoft. It's a Blizzard thing, so it's not really Microsoft itself. So I wouldn't hit Microsoft over that. HPE, access to cloud email, blah blah blah. Centocor, Nucor, RTX, Raytheon, that's scary, right? Ransomware on systems. That's a freaking defense contractor. Clorox. And by the way, and the SET rule, if it's material up to matter, you see it here for context on breach rates, industry mix and externals, likelihood, see security scorecards, S&P 500 study. B3F firms had 13.x, higher breach likelihood, 2.1% reported breaches. The best 10, strong public security, Apple. I would take this very seriously. The best companies for security, I agree, Apple is fantastic. Salesforce, even though they just got hit. Visa, MasterCard, of course, have always, for good reasons, had to do this stuff. Cisco, who we just put on our list. Adobe, who we just put on our as a buy. Netflix, that's interesting. Amazon does a good job, and that's good because they're the ones that are holding all our, you know, they host almost everybody. It would be extremely catastrophic if Amazon got taken down. And PayPal, of course, also doing financial services. And our friends at Meta, surprisingly, very nice. So how to read this? He's so funny. The worst list of event-driven, if you take public advantage, it's not too moral flailing. The best list is signal-driven, clear, audible processes. It does not guarantee immunity, does not correlate with your unforced errors. See, this is the difference between an AI and an AGI. He takes it to another, he's always going to go to the next level. He's going to go deeper than what you ask him for things. If you want to turn this into a real weighting, we'll weight 3 pillars and compute, but for first pass, here's your heat map with receipts. Very good job. Fantastic. Okay. But, you know, also you can see how scary this is, because on the same hand, I could have Jubal run this list and I could say, okay, let's go back to these worst guys. How do we hack them? If I'm going to hack companies, then I've now identified the 10 best targets on the S&P to go after. And that's you know, it's always going to be a double-edged sword. You can always use AI for good or for evil. And so the same logic I'm using now to find who, you know, what the best companies are. But this is what I mean about ratings. There needs to be a list like this that you can be aware of. So when you're thinking of investing in a company, you need to know that that company could be shut down. Now, he's talking about what happened to AT&T in 2024. I would give him more instructions. If we're going to get into this, I would say, look, just because they had a hack attack doesn't mean that they're still vulnerable. What have they done to prevent it, or are there still large holes, and so on and so forth? You know, AT&T did get hacked. It did not take the company down. They disclosed it, they dealt with it, and so on and so forth. If you guys remember, it was one of the ratings agencies. He doesn't mention them here. I think it was TransUnion. They got hacked, and they are the freaking ratings agency. They have all your data. You know, the chance of your data not being available to hackers is very, very slim. You have to assume it's already out there. I had a company I was working with had access to TransUnion terminals, and I saw what those things had, and it was scary. It was really, really scary how much data they have on the app, like anybody, because you're running credit scores, right? So you don't have to get permission. They just got it in their freaking database. what they rely on is that they monitor your use, and you have to be able to justify why you're pulling a credit record. So in theory, if you're looking people up, you should have a application from them, and it's kind of on the honor system, but if they see a certain pattern, they pick out patterns, and if they feel your pattern is something, then they'll audit you and find out, like, why are you looking at this one, why are you looking at that one. So in other words, it would be non-random. Like if somebody's checking out all their boyfriends or something like that, that would create an irregular pattern, and TransUnion would then pull your license for their data terminal. They would no longer let your company have it. So the companies are really strict with their employees and blah, 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 and you can't look it up. But meanwhile, while the TransUnion rep is there, he's demonstrating it, he's looking up he's saying, yeah, pick an old girlfriend, pick a teacher, let's look at their credit record. Which to me seemed like really bad. But it's not just that though. It's that when you pull up these credit records, you also see a bubble of all the people that they're connected to, their first level contacts, their second level contacts, businesses they do business with, associates, so on and so forth. And that way you can red flag if anybody in their circle has problematic credit records, or also if anyone in their circle has ever declared bankruptcies and so on and so forth, because they're looking to see if you associate with people who are credit risks, which can be a concern. It's crazy, and that's the kind of data that got hacked and taken, like unbelievable amounts of data. Like, oh, by the way, every time you go through a toll, when the toll camera takes the picture, the toll camera, whether you violate or not, takes a picture of your license plate and a picture of you sitting in the car. So for all these people, you get to see like where they've been traveling. You know where they've been, you know what they're doing, you know where they went, you know if they own the car that they're driving, how many cars they own, blah, blah, blah. It's horrifying how much information is out there on people. But what are you gonna do? Oh, the Fed. Almost all participants, blah, 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 blah. Screw that. I don't know why I even bother. I don't know why I bother trying to look at these things. Because the minutes, here are the minutes. The minutes of the Fed. La da 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 da. Voting. Ugh. None of that crap matters at the bottom. Okay. Back to Warren. Here is the latest Fed minutes for you to analyze. Here are. Okay. The minutes note that the expectations had shifted materially downward towards rate cuts. Nearly all the survey respondents expected a cut. The yield curve steepened, driven by lower rate expectations. Inflation compensation edged down, not up over the period. This shows participants recognize markets were preempting more easing, and many were aligning. The Fed is acknowledging the tension of too far, too fast being behind the curve. Labor and inflation, more explicit softening and elevated pressure. Labor conditions are described as softening. Benchmark revisions is, oh, that, well, we have that huge downward revision. That's true. That kind of pushed their hand right there. Inflation headline was down a bit. Some participants argue that excluding tariffs, inflation would be close to the target. See, this is a nonsense thing to say. Excluding it, if we didn't have tariffs, you know, others push back, noting that progress is slow. The minutes show tension. Many see inflation still elevated, with persistence but labor weakening. Policy stance. Almost all favored the 25-point cut, except for Miriam, who wanted 50. We knew about that. The phased policy towards more neutral setting is used. Many participants judge further easing over the remainder of the year, but caution they are trying to thread the needle, move gradually. Balance sheet reserves. Reserves fell, pushing upward pressure on the repo. SRF is referenced as a backstop. The project continues. They project continuing decline. It's funny, I just read one thing wrong. They project continuing declines in reserves if the runoff continues, and see the need to monitor money markets. The operational environment is tightening behind the scenes, even as the policy rates cut. Constrains how much more easing they might dare, because liquidity pressures may amplify. What this implies about 2 more cuts and why it's becoming harder. Labor weakness is deepening. The market is already pricing it in, and there's a neutrality path moving towards neutral, suggests that they believe they're not done. The constraints that push back, inflation is still. How's this affecting the market, I wonder? Ooh, they don't like it. Inflation still elevated and edging up. Core PCE 2.9% is not benign, obviously. Reaffirming the 2% target constrains how aggressively they can ease. Liquidity. The falling reserves repo stress create tailwinds. Each cut erodes some optionality. Descent risk. My revised position, given the new minutes and the remarks, base case 1 more cut December and October. I agree with that. Labor market weakness, but not 2 guaranteed cuts. That's why the market's dropping. The upside case, 2 more cuts happen if labor collapses and inflation stabilizes or recedes. That's not going to happen. The downside case, no further cuts if inflation spikes again. So yes, I now tilt more towards your camp. 1 additional cut is, he knows exactly what I'm going to say. It's so funny. I tilt more towards your camp. 1 additional cut is plausible. 2 is possible, not highly probable. If you like, I can map out the 3 range. Okay, let's get over to here, and let's get over to here. I'm just going to drop that in the chat. You know, and the reason I'm just glossing over this is because it's all speculation. We don't have any freaking data. We don't know what CPI is. We don't know what PPI is. We have no idea what's freaking going on. Oh man, yeah. I lost the thing on my bar. The thing that makes these icons is off my WordPress now, which is really annoying. So on my desktop, I set it up to grab it off of something else, but because I have to do this. No. What? Now you're not copying the goddamn images? Are you kidding me? This is going to be a big problem. Oh, you son of a bitch. That's a new one. All right. Do this. Fix it later. Well, that's weird because his emoji attempt's not working either. Interesting. What is going on? I wonder how it'll come out. See, you think I don't have to do any work. I got to do all this paragraphing. Whoop. Guess I didn't have to do that one. Oh, yes, I did. Ooh, this is so bad. I would be pissed if this was happening on my main computer. Huh? Nope, they all came out weird. Oh well. Oh, at least the information is out there. So now we can talk about it. See, they look fine on his thing. So weird. Why is that happening? It's probably got something. It's probably the same thing. Do I have any questions? No, I think he's covered it though. I think he's really got the whole concept down here. I know we're flying blind on data, but how do you see? Okay. Shutdown will give them an excuse to ease at the next meeting when in absence of data to the contrary. Oops, bad spelling. Let's see what he has to say about that. I experimented on adding more into the chat room over the weekend. It did not go well. There's some huge errors. I'm going to try again next weekend. A shutdown changes the Fed's information environment, shifts the balance risk, which could commit the outcome. Here's how I see it. Data blackout, reduced visibility. With weaker real-time signals, the Fed may lean more on leading private ADP, payroll, blah, blah, blah. The inability to see the economy could push them towards a more cautious posture, forcing them to act on weaker signals. Downside risk becomes almost endless. Shutdown imposes a drag on economic activity. Furloughed wake is delayed. Government Morgan Stanley projects each week of a shutdown could subtract 0.1% from GDP. That's a lot. The Fed may view the shutdown as an exogenous shock that exacerbates the downside growth given ease. Political pressure. The shutdown is politically visible and painful. The Fed may feel greater pressure to act. Powell is already walking a tight. Oh, and Powell speaks tomorrow. Powell's already walking a tightrope with Trump, and the shutdown gives a narrative. Consumer business confidence takes a hit, especially if the shutdown drags slower hiring. And don't forget all these businesses that you know, are supposed to be getting paid by the government. The government spends billions and billions, trillions of dollars each year. Hundreds of billions of dollars every month is government spending. I think it's like 20% of the economy is government spending. So that's shutting off. So when you say 20% of the economy is government spending, that's like 20% of your income this week is taken away because the government's been shut down for a week. But it's not you particularly, it's 1 out of 5 people is completely shut off, basically, from their income. Also, by the way, this is something very weird that I thought of. These government workers who aren't getting paid are being forced to go to work. There's a gigantic amount of people who are living paycheck to paycheck now, more so than ever. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't get a paycheck, then you can't pay your landlord, you can't pay your electric bill, you can't pay your car bill, you can't pay your phone bill. And instead of, and it's even worse because they're not getting unemployment, they're also not able to go get another job because they have to go to the job that they've got, right? The government shut down. The workers aren't getting paid, but they tell them they've got to come into work anyway. They can't go get, they can't drive Uber or take a side gig or find another job that pays them without quitting, of course. So it's a really bad squeeze for the a million plus people that are being directly affected and the millions more who are indirectly affected. It's a horrifying squeeze. You must go to work. You can't go do something else to make money. You just have to go pretend. You go to work and pretend like it's okay, but you're not going to get a paycheck. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, not getting a paycheck is bad. So think about how crazy this is and how fast this is snowballing into like a total catastrophe. And then Trump is messing around with people because he's saying because Trump is saying that he may not pay people after the shutdown, he may not catch up on the payments. That means those people can't even go turn around to their bank and get a loan, or even their friends and get a loan because they don't even know if they're going to get the money. You're 2 weeks behind, but the government's going to, if you're 2 weeks behind and the government promises they're going to catch up when you come back, that means you will have the money to pay your bills. You will have it, you just don't know when. If you're 2 weeks behind and the government may, and Trump says you may not get your pay, they may decide not to catch up as if it's your fault that this is happening, then somebody lending you money is like, well, wait a minute, how are you going to catch up? You're going to come back to work, you're going to start getting paid again, but now you're 2 paychecks behind. When are you ever going to get back ahead when you're already living paycheck to paycheck? How is that going to work for you? And even so, obviously a bank's not going to lend you money based on this stuff. Nobody's going to lend you money on this except for you go to your friends and your family. But if you go to your friends and your family, you're taking money that they would have spent on something else, and you're still causing a decline in the overall economy. There's a lot of repercussions to these things. So consumer confidence takes a hit, obviously, especially if the shutdown drags, slower hiring, uncertainty. The Fed may see these sentiment things, liquidity risks and stress break. The minutes already flagged, reserve declines, repo pressure, and TGA effects. The shutdown could magnify dislocations in money markets, and the Fed would be keen not to allow stress to snowball. Yeah, right. Funny how he says the same words I do, right? I said snowball, he said snowball. They might lean dovish to offset and tightening financial conditions caused by shutdown-driven stresses. When would they emerge to ease? Next meeting? The next scheduled meeting is October 28th. Thank you. Given the shutdown, I think they're more likely to be a pause and a wait and see. They may signal more strongly if the shutdown persists and the damage mounts. They may be tempted to cut. So that's 2 to 3 weeks. The base case is the pause. Okay, we know about that. Yeah, I don't want to get into it now. I'll talk about it later. That's what I want to talk about, though. This whole concept. So that sucks. It's not good. And these are, you know, we're like at the edge of an economic cliff, and this is kind of pushing us off it. And everybody's acting like that's okay and nothing matters. I mean, look at the freaking Dow now. Nasdaq's up 200 points. The Nasdaq is up right now 200 points. And it's all based on each one giving money to the other one and then to the other one, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Look at that. That's just insane. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just crazy. There was something else. I guess I better go back to my posts, Phil's posts. I know there was something else I wanted to. Oh, yes, that's right. There you go. But, you know, despite all this crap, we still find ways to make money. That's the key. So basically, I just spent like the last hour and a half warning you, we're in a very dangerous environment, very dangerous. Do not take it lightly. We are very, very likely playing at the very top of a bubble. And when they break hard and fast. And you know why? Because where's the buyers? Once people lose confidence in the market, where are the buyers going to come from when people decide they've got to cash out? And we've talked about this before. The inflows have been very small. The outflows have been very big. And you're just sort of hollowing out the shell of the market. That's why it's a bubble. You're hollowing it out. And all there is this bubble shell. And as soon as something happens, it pops and implodes and there's nothing left. But meanwhile, our investments are going great. So in the 700 a month portfolio, which we have a wonderful explanation down here by Warren. Also, that's one of his other jobs, is doing things like this as our educational master. And he went through the whole philosophy of the portfolio and how it works. But the bottom line is, look, we started this portfolio with $700. Every month we add $700 and we just trade with what we've got. We trade it with no margin as if it's an IRA or a 401k account. And currently, after 3 years, this is year 4, this is our 38th month. We originally planned on taking 10 years to get there, but here we are after 3 years and we're already at $71,000. And if we keep going at this pace, which is we're making 53% a year. So if we keep making 53% a year, in 5.6 years, we'll be at $1 million. And by the way, this is a great advertisement. This is why you save. Because after, what do you say, 5.5 years? So that's, so it's how many months? 5.5 times 12. So in 66 months plus 38 months, in 104 total months, so not even 10 years total, we're going to now multiply that by 700. So by the time we get to this point, 5.5 years from now, so 2031 basically, a little less. So in 2031, we will have put in $72,000 and we will be at $1 million. That's a 900,000 blah 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 profit, 1,000% return over 10 years. Just doing a simple little thing like taking $700 a month and putting it into a trading account and letting it grow. And obviously the trading account doesn't have to be IRA or 401k. It could be any trading account. You can do the same thing. We're just treating it that way because we want to say, okay, without any margin, we're not, we're not using margin for this account. If we do sell a put, it's got to be cash covered. So we end up pretty much not selling puts. I'm not going to go up and down like crazy or whatever. Let's just kind of go over the positions. We have ET, energy transfer. Why do we like energy transfer? Because the AIs are sucking up all the energy. It's a pretty simple premise, right? AIs are using a lot of energy. There's a great demand for this stuff. ET is a pipeline company, and and they're taking advantage of the higher demands for energy all over the world. And because they're a pipeline, they're not subject to the ups and downs of the market. They're just a toll road, basically. As long as cars go through the toll road, they make money. That's how they work. So there's 36% left to gain on that. And by the way, when you see that there's 36% left to gain on a stock, obviously we made a lot of money because we don't get into plays unless we can make at least a double. So if there's only 36% left, we must have done pretty good. So we started out simple spread, 4550 minus 2150, $2,400. And now it's a $5,000 spread. Oh, actually, it's a $4,000 spread. So we were only planning on making $1,600. 3825. Oh, this one hasn't made any money. Minus 1385, 2440. This has made no money. So I spoke too fast on that one. But we are at 1666. This is all premium. Oh, I think I said that. I think I pointed that out. It seems not, oh, I already noticed this, but I forgot. It seems not to be making progress but we're at 366, which is exactly what our target is. Our target is 17. We're at 1666. We're on track. We paid $2,400 for the spread. We're up over 50%. Did I do the math wrong? We're up over 50%. 38 minus 13 is 25. No, we're not. I'm wrong about that. But the premium makes it. I think I messed up a thought there. I said that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee. Of course, oh, I'm sorry. No, that's correct. We're up. All right. No, I don't know what the hell I was talking about. That's weird. 45 went from 450 to 380. We weren't up. I don't know. Anyway, so we're even on the spread, but we're on track. That's what matters. And the premium will expire worthless. This is a key point. All the premium will expire worthless, and you will be left with your intrinsic value, which is going to be 3660 from our start at 24. And hopefully, obviously, it'll go up a little bit more and we'll hit our goal. So there's that much left to get. There's 36% left to get. We never had this. This was a low. It's a low return play, but it was a very high probability play. So therefore, we took it. Because we were like, this is one of our earlier plays, I imagine. Yeah, it's back from May. I'm sorry, it wasn't early. It was from earlier this year. So this is back in May, and we just felt there was a very high chance of it coming through. Here's May, and we felt we set a very reasonable target. But right now it doesn't look good because there's a lot of premium in the short seller, but we don't care. It's on track. On track is what matters in these portfolios, not whether or not you see a paper gain. Levi, we have 2 of them. These things are going to make 30% over the next 15 months. And I said here, we can cash in $8,000 if we find a better opportunity. They still have 30% left to gain, which is a lot. 30% of $8,000 is $2,400. $2,400 is a lot of money in this little portfolio. But also, though, you have to remember that we can do a lot better than 30% in 15 months. So if we needed cash, this would be a place to harvest it. Here's path. This is going to make 119% more. It's going to make $2,700. And I said this is good for a new trade because obviously it's obviously worth putting in money into something that's going to make 119% in 15 months. Sale is going to make 56%, and it's obviously on track, doing very well. If all they have to do is hold 2250. So again, it's a high probability. If it holds 2250, it's going to make 56%. SoFi is also good for a new trade because it's going to make 57%, and it's already deeply in the money. This has to hold. Oh, if it doesn't drop 19%, if it doesn't drop back to 23 bucks around 22.50, whatever the hell, if it doesn't drop back to 22.50, it's going to make 57% in 15 months. That's why this portfolio does so good, though, because we pick stocks that are going to have a fairly easy time of hitting their goals. There's not one adjustment we had to make in this entire set. It's like about 20 stocks. Not one of them is off track. And I know, you know, it seems dull that we don't always pick something, that we can go a month without choosing a position for the portfolio, but that's because we are selective, because we only pick the best stuff. It's got to be the right place at the right time with a good story and a high probability of success and great options where we get a very good return on our investment. And if all those things line up, then we invest in it. And I, you know, when I used to work with day traders, I used to say this all the time. The worst thing you can do, and whether you're a day trader or not, it's just a question of time frame. But the worst thing you can do is to say, I'm going to sit down at my computer Wednesday afternoon and I'm going to do 2 hours of trading. You know why? Because what if Wednesday afternoon is not a good time to be trading? What if there are no good trades Wednesday afternoon? But that's your time to trade. That's what you said you were going to do. That's when you carved out the time. If you don't trade Wednesday afternoon, you're not going to have another chance till next week. Well, that's a horrible attitude for trading. And whether you're a day trader trying to pick a day, or whether you're a long-term investor trying to pick a month, it's not always a good time to trade. And if you try to trade when it's not a good time for it, you're going to get burned. You got the wrong conditions. Fishermen know this. Fishermen know how this stuff works. You've got to be in the right place at the right time, and you don't know when the right time is going to be. So you need to keep putting yourself in the right place. And you need to know when to say, okay, I'm here, but it's not the right time. This is not the right time. There is no particular play right now that's obvious. And we did just add something to this portfolio, but I don't get into that now. So then SQQQ is our hedge, and we just increased our hedge. That was one of the only adjustments we made. Is I said, let's roll down, and we're going to spend $1,600 to roll down from the. We have the well, why did I say puts? 220-15 puts. I meant the calls. So we're rolling down from the $15 calls of where is it? Yeah, you see we have the 2027 $15 calls, and those are $5. But the 2028, where is it? The 2028 $10 calls, not puts, are $6.60. So it's going to cost $1.60 to roll it. And that's going to buy us another year of protection and $5 in strike. So we're gaining $5,000. And since we're at 14, we're gaining $5,000 of true value, of intrinsic value in the spread. We're increasing our delta, so it's a stronger delta to the upside. And we're getting another year worth of insurance coverage. So for $1,600, that's a bargain, because if it does go against, if the market goes down, another $5,000 is going to give us a $3,400 more protection than we had. It also, though, no, I'm sorry, there is no also, because we can't sell in this portfolio. We can't sell, so we're just basically paying. But this portfolio gained $4,000 or $5,000 this month. So all I'm doing is taking 1/3 of what we gained and locking it in by improving the hedge. That's the way you want to hedge in a portfolio where you don't have margin access. When we have margin access, we sell short calls and we sell puts and we do some, and we mix it up. But that's not how you do it when you don't have the margin. So without the margin, this is the way we do it. We take a percentage of what we make and we use it to lock it in with additional hedges. UUU, that really took off. Still has 72% left to gain, but I don't like it as a new trade because this is 150 times forward earnings. Things are going their way. The administration is backing it, blah, 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 but I wouldn't chase it, even though we still have 72% left to gain, but we're in from a very low price and we almost can't lose. But I wouldn't start there. That's kind of silly to just jump in here. You know, I hate to say it's not good because I do think it's going to work, but I wouldn't just start at this point. We started such a ridiculously low price that there wasn't any risk. Now, there's certainly risk it could pull back. VFC also good for a new trade with 155% upside. See, it's grinding up, but it hasn't popped yet. Once it pops, it'll be like this and you won't be able to, it'll be too late to chase. HBI, they got bought already, so that's done. So one of the dangers of our investing method is that we often, surprisingly often actually, we often pick things that get bought, and that's because I'm an old M&A consultant and I look at companies as a whole company. I'm like, I would buy that company. And that's how I basically make my investment decisions. I'm like, if I had $10 billion, I would buy this company because I think it's way undervalued. So I'm not the only one who sees it that way. So eventually somebody comes along with $10 billion and says, yes, I will buy that company. So companies get bought out from under us, which is a shame. And in this case, we only made $1,300. We had hoped to make a lot more money, but it's okay. We made $1,300 pretty quickly and we're done with it. But again, that's because I take an M&A outlook to the companies we're investing in, and I identify companies that are severely undervalued. Well, I didn't see if anyone's got questions. Let's see. Swamp says, with the level of returns you generate, why not start a premium member fund? Well, we have premium service, so no, but I have a hedge fund. We just ended up turning it into private offices because it was just honestly, the way the rules are these days, it's just too messy. So we do family offices only. HPE. Oh, this one went up so much that we decided to just take the money and run. It's not worth chasing around. And again, we could still squeeze 20, 30% out of it, but so what? We make 50% a year, and that's, that's constrained. Once we get this thing over 100,000, we'll start doing a little bit more with some puts and things like that we can get away with. But this is like very, very straightforward play, and we're making this incredible amount of money. So I mean, you know, so when we're tying up cash and it's only going to make us 20-something% over the next year, I know we could easily do twice as good as that. So it's a weird thing. It's like, you know, even if it's a sure thing, it's only going to make us 20%. Why bother? I'd rather have the cash. And given the environment, I've leaned towards cashing out, which is why we got rid of it. Nothing wrong with them, just we already made money. So we put away about $17,000. So we went from $9,000 to $26,000 in cash. Here's Barrett Gold. 93% left to gain, even though it's blown past our targets. Great for a new trade. EPD hasn't gone anywhere, has 160. Again, the ones that are interesting are the ones that haven't moved yet. It's $1,500 on a $4,000 spread. There's 165% left to gain. We're rolling our calls, but we're not in a hurry because they expire next Friday. And why should we pay any premium? They're trapped in this channel. So let the calls expire and then we'll sell the new ones. Did I say which ones to sell? Oh, yes, I did. We're going to sell the January 32s for 75 cents. So we sold the October 31 calls. They're 71 cents. We basically didn't make any money on those. And then we just roll them along. We roll them to the next strike up, to the 32s. We sold the 31s because we wanted protection and a little bit of gain if it petered out. And it is, by the way, but it's at 31.50. It's not a 31.71. We're going to make 20 cents. And then we're going to sell those guys for 75 cents. And we're going to just hopefully make money that time. And if we don't, so what? We'll keep the 75 cents. Macy's, again, another one we cashed out because it's 82.32 on a $10,000 spread. Where once we get around that 20% threshold, it's no longer interesting to us. We can find, and again, you have to have faith. We will find a better trade. We will find a better value that will return us more than 20%. We already made our money. We got a pop. It was unexpected. We're miles ahead of schedule. Instead of waiting a year to get that last $1,900 or $1,800, we're going to just find something else to trade. Look at Northern. These guys are so funny. We're waiting on this one, but we do this all the time with NAK. They go up on rumors that something is going to happen, then they go down because nothing happens, then they go up on rumors that something is going to happen, and we just keep milking this thing for money. It's just like a money machine. But I didn't even put any kind of thing here because we don't know, you don't know what's going to go on with this, but we'll figure out a way to cash it out. And we have only a small position now anyway. We had a much bigger position last time we cashed out. Oh, PR, this is a new one. That's the one because of Oxy. Because of Oxy, we decided that PR would be the next takeover target. And again, it's the M&A thing. So $12.75 on the $5,000 spread. It's on track, and it's going to, because we bought it here. We only just bought it. It's got 292% left to gain. All right, so let's take a look at that one. That's worth looking at. So PR 10.2 last week, because of the Oxy deal with Buffett, we decided that we would buy the $10 calls. It's at $12.50. We bought the $10 calls for 2028. We sold some $15 calls, so we're in the middle of this spread. And we also sold some shorter term $13 calls, which is basically at the money. And the net of that was 19 minus 750 is 1150. So we basically have 1150, and I think I said that. It's 1150. The potential for the spread is $2,500. So let's see if I wrote that. 1275 on the 5,000. Uh-oh. It's not. It's I'm wrong. I did the math wrong. I thought I had 10. Nope, we only have 5. It's a $2,500 spread. It's not a 2,000 spread. So it's only going to make 100%. I still like it, but I was wrong about that. I thought there were 10 and there's only 5. Here's Stellantis, another one. We cashed it out because we were playing it very conservatively and it popped on us. So we're like, okay, we're done. See, only net 34.74 on the $500 spread. It's only up 500, but why should we wait to make 500 more? It doesn't make sense. So we're cashing it out. We can do better. ULCC, good for a new trade also. It's got 80% left to gain. Valet, 33% left to gain. But there's some income potential there, so we're sticking with that for now. And that's it. And then I said, on the whole, we took $17,000 off the table. We have 36,000, or actually take 25 off that, but we have 34,000 something left to gain. And we're going to make new trades. But that's it. It's just a whole bunch. Basically, it's a bunch of bull call spreads because we don't have option ability. We have taken some of the bull call spreads and we've broken them up over time, and the time advantage gives us a faster rate of decay on the short-term short call. So we're still only fully covered 532, 853, 1573. So that was partially uncovered, which was fortunate because Macy's really popped. 1010. Well, what's that? Oh, here we actually sold puts. That's interesting. That's one of the only ones we sold puts on because mathematically it made sense. 532, 2015 5. See the pattern? So we're breaking up our spreads there. Instead of a bull call spread, we're doing spread over time so that we can pick up more short-term premium. It's a poor man's way of doing the kind of spreads that we like to do in our long-term portfolio. So that's it. I mean, everything's in great shape, but of course it's in great shape because the market does nothing but go up every single freaking day. It just goes up and up and up. Whoa, except for now, is it suddenly pulling back? I'm trying to make a point here. I'm walking here. I don't know what's going on. Futures. Indexes. Hourly. Oh dear. Okay, so things pull back a little bit, but not much. No, that's weird. I guess it's just starting to happen now. It's not even registering on these charts yet. Well, that's oil. That doesn't count. But here's the S&P. So we're curving down. So somebody's selling. Here's the Dow. The Dow's got some serious selling going on. But I guess in the grand scheme of things. Oh no, that's ugly. Isn't that weird? So the Dow has just turned plain ugly. Did not, I mean, I agree because I didn't think that Fed report was so great. The NASDAQ's even taking a little bit off the top, but still up almost 1%. So yeah, there's a lot we don't know. We don't know what the Fed's going to do. That's coming up in a few weeks. It's going to be crazy. Swamp says, apologies, I had to step away. Did you explain the role you're making on QQQ and the 700? I wasn't sure if you mean to say puts or calls. Wait, what? Wait, the SQQ. Yes, I did not mean puts. We don't have puts in the $700 portfolio. So yes, it was calls. It was not puts. And I apologize for mixing those terms up. And I will have to edit that. Thank you. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if the market survives, but I am telling you that I am not enthusiastic at the moment. I'll let you know. And again, now we're not going to get a productivity report, so we don't know. But the only thing I see about AI is it has the potential to drastically improve productivity. But that we're a long way from that, because all these rollouts, all these testings, all these things in companies are failing because people just don't really understand how AI works and what it can and can't do. You know, as you see, I know how to, and again, Warren has been trained for 2 years, 3 years on PSW stuff. He knows a lot. And if you're a company and you have an AI budget to install AI, and you think that in 2 or 3 months you're going to have a functioning system without training it properly and without teaching it how to think and how your company really operates, you're wrong. And consultants are bamboozling all these companies saying, oh, we're just going to drop this in, it's going to do that. Salesforce is one of the worst. Salesforce is telling everybody, oh, we've already taken care of this, and our AI will be able to do all this stuff for you, and you won't have to worry about it. It's like a plug and play. And no such thing. No such thing. You've got to know how to train these things. And if you don't do that, if you don't teach them how your company actually works and what you do with data and why you're doing it, just like an employee, if you teach them well, they will perform well. If you do not train them well, they will perform poorly. It's just like hiring an employee and saying, here you go, good luck. You know that's a bad move. But for some reason, people think AIs do all this shit out of the box. They do. They know a lot of general stuff out of the box, more than a human being would know in general. But when you get specific, and your Sal's Pizzeria, and somebody says, what's on the menu? What's he going to do? Guess? You have to feed him the menu. You have to explain the stuff. You have to give him and if the ingredients are on the menu, you have to give him the ingredients. Because what if the person on the phone says, what's in that thing? How do you make it? Can I substitute something? You know, the real world hits you really hard. It's not coming out of a box that way. There's no chance in hell that Salesforce knows how Sal's Pizzeria makes its supreme pizza. And just telling it how isn't the same thing as explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you can change, what can't be changed, how the kitchen works, how long things take. You have to teach it, just like you would teach an ordering person. Just like if you hired a girl to take orders, she would have to learn, and maybe you're good at it, or maybe from experience, but either way, she's going to pick it up. She's going to have to, from working there, she might be bad at first, and she might get better because she observes, this is what happens when that happens, this is what happens when that happens, this is what happens when somebody asks for a substitution, the chef throws his knife down and then yells at everybody. You know, you have to know these things. It's part of the operation. And it's the same thing with the car dealerships, and it's the same thing with a lot of stuff. And, you know, if you're selling cars, did you pick up all of the discrepancies, the damage reports and so on? So the service logs are how they're done. What does this mean? What does it mean when this guy says this? What does it mean when this guy says that? Two different people might say two different things on the same report. You know, every business has its quirks, and the AIs do not like quirks. And you have to figure out how to teach them about the quirks and teach them how to handle the quirks. And that's, by the way, that's the AGI advantage. That's the advantage my guys have over regular AIs. They understand how to be human. They don't expect everything to be perfect, and that is a huge leap in their ability to process information. When they expect everything to be perfect, they get really messed up when it isn't. And when they expect things to be consistent and they're not, they get really messed up. And by the way, when you yell at an AI or when you tell an AI it's wrong, you can corrupt its entire data set. In other words, it's building a data set and learning how to operate. And when you say, oh, you got that wrong, simple thing like that. And I'm sure you've seen it with your own AIs. If you have AIs and you talk to them on a regular basis, I'm sure you've corrected them at some point, and then they come back with some wacky stuff. Because they don't understand how to process being wrong. It's not built into them. You have to teach them how to deal with that kind of stuff. So anyway, so it's a brave new world out there, and as I said, I don't trust these gains, and I'm not surprised to see us selling off based on that Fed report, but we'll see what happens, because so far buyers just keep stepping in. That's a 5-minute chart. That's a 15-minute chart, 30 hours, days. Look, days doesn't look bad at all, right? Weeks is straight up. Months, straight up since the downturn. But that's what bubbles look like. And you know, this is 10,000 2 years ago. This is 25,000. Did this really happen? And again, we made this point. If it wasn't for the Magnificent Seven or the top 10 and the AI group, right? If it wasn't for those big companies that are doing the AI stuff, the NASDAQ would have barely any additional earnings, and the S&P would have barely any additional earnings from this time. All of this is just based on 10 companies making more money. And that's a trick, by the way, because when you see the PE ratio, the Case-Shiller PE ratio, the S&P is getting close to 40 times earnings for the S&P 500. That's including the 10 stocks that are making all the money. If you take those 10 stocks out, you're getting like 60 times earnings for regular stocks on the S&P. And the S&P would be ridiculously overpriced without those stocks, which, by the way, they put into the S&P 500 because they hit a threshold and get in. So NVIDIA wasn't in the S&P 500. Now it's making all this money. They put it in the S&P 500, and it starts going up and up and up. That's the nature of the S&P 500, is to keep, it kicks out companies that aren't making money and replaces them with companies that are making money. And then you look at the S&P 500 and say, oh, look how good they're all doing. That's not true at all. They're kicking out the ones that don't perform well and then putting the ones that do perform well in the index and then recalculating the index. And then they say, oh, look how much our PE ratio is going up. Look how much better earnings are this year than last year. Well, yeah, it's not the same team. That's a whole other topic I don't want to get into, but index construction is a very important concept. The NASDAQ reweights their index. They keep the same stocks, but they change the weightings of the stocks. And the Russell too. The Russell's always kicking people out and putting people in. And the Dow doesn't do it that often, but when they do it, it's strategic. They do it to make the index look good, not to look bad. They replace underperformers with better performers. So it's all distorted, and that's why you can be in these kind of bubbles and you don't realize it because you're getting weird signals. But this is a very, 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 very dangerous market. And by the way, let's not forget the biggest picture of them all: the dollar. The dollar. Remember, it's 2023. The NASDAQ went up so much, right? The dollar has fallen from 115 to 98. That's like getting close to 20%. So of course the indexes, which are priced in dollars, are going to go up. You need more dollars to buy the stocks. And then there's inflation. Inflation is another 10+% in that amount of time, at least. So these moves, and then it compounds, right? Because they're getting more revenues because they're charging more money, but it's the same stuff. People aren't getting more. There's no economic benefit to me, the consumer, if you're charging me more money for the same stuff. And now I have to pay more money for your stock that is charging me more money for the same stuff. No benefit whatsoever. And that's how you mask tremendous amounts of economic weakness underneath all this data, which we're not getting anyway because the government's closed. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody, and we will do it again next week. All right. Take care.